Welcome to Tipping the Scales, a climate conversation series hosted by the Global Returns Project. I'm thrilled today to be speaking with Dr. Claudia Schneider. Claudia is a social psychologist and behavioral scientist. She received her PhD in psychology from Columbia University, and she's now based at the University of Cambridge, where she works with the Cambridge Social Decision-Making Laboratory and the Winton Centre for Risk and Evidence Communication. Her research explores avenues to address society-level social issues, such as climate change mitigation or intergroup conflict. The core of her work centers on the role of positive emotions and social influences for prosocial behavior and collective action. Claudia, thanks for joining me on Tipping the Scales.
Thanks, Jack, for a lovely introduction. Very, very pleased to be here. Thank you.
So, Claudia, as a behavioral scientist, your research has focused on avenues for motivating positive behavior change. And my first question is, how does that work relate to climate change?
Yeah, so when we think about climate change, it's important to understand that it's a global social issue, meaning it's not just one person, it's the collective, it's everyone across all countries. So the behavior of people is quite important. And with that also behavior change towards more climate change mitigation friendly action, so to say. So when we think about the kind of messaging that we've received with regards to mitigating climate change, it has for a long time often focused on the sort of doom and gloom messaging, trying to bring across the severity of the issue, but at the same time, maybe sometimes almost overwhelming people. So in some of my work, we compare the kind of negative emotional angle and the positive emotional angle, specifically where we asked people to anticipate how proud they would feel with a green action, as we call it, or a pro-environmentally action, or a brown action, which is the non-environmentally friendly action. And what we found was that for all our different outcome measures, we saw that those who thought about their level of pride and how good they would feel with engaging in green behaviors, they showed more intentions to buy green products, perform, green actions such as using public transport more often than their own car, reducing their carbon footprint, compared to those who had been asked to think about the kind of negative emotional level that they would feel with not doing these actions. So that really showed that when we think about climate change and the kind of framing in an intervention context, that the sort of positive framing might be more beneficial compared to the negative framing.
Claudia, what does behavioral science tell us about how to move forward in the best way and most effectively in order to tackle the climate crisis?
So from my perspective and my field, I think one important aspect is the kind of making the problem more tangible, more local, less abstract, bringing in, a certain level of, emotional components so that people can relate to it without numbing them. And another aspect that is currently quite researched is the idea of incorporating a social normative influence. We recently ran a study that looked at attitudes and behavioral intentions in 3 different countries across North America, Europe, and Asia, where we asked people for their perceptions on how much they feel people in their local environments, in their towns, have changed to engage more in actions that help to mitigate the impacts of human-caused climate change. And then we measured their personal intentions on how much they actually want to engage in these kind of behaviors and actions. And what we saw is that those people who perceive that others are doing things, that more and more are engaging, they also expressed that they themselves are more likely to engage in pro-environmental behaviors and climate change mitigation actions. So this really highlights, among other research that has been conducted by other groups, that when we feel there is a sort of movement, that there is a trend, that it's not just you on your own, but a sizable group of people that we are engaging to do something, it can really be quite motivating to people to then engage as well themselves.
So Claudia, I know you're also, among the many things you do, a member of the Global Returns Project Advisory Board. And I'm wondering what about the project's approach to taking climate action got you interested in supporting our campaign?
What drew me in right from the beginning was first and foremost the sort of positive emotional angle. The idea that it's not about trying to make people feel bad about, what has happened in the future, in the past, how we got to this point, and not about, we have to change this, otherwise terrible things are happening, but more the sort of, we have this issue, but we can deal with it if we work together, and we can create the sort of positive movement to come up with solutions and create change. And then lastly, I think tying into what I said before, this idea of efficacy. Oftentimes people might not know what they can do or how they can do it. We're not experts. We don't have the expertise. We don't have the time to do all the research. So I think the project is terrific in that it creates this platform to give people the necessary information to know, well, I can invest here and this will make a difference. I can trust that it will make a difference. And in that, I think it sort of, touches on all of these components that can actually lead to the kind of movement, campaign character that, we know from the research can actually then sort of snowball and, tip the scales and actually create this positive social change.
Well, Claudia, I feel really empowered to make change after this conversation. So thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Tipping the Scales is hosted by the Global Returns Project, a charitable campaign to fund not-for-profit climate solutions at scale. To learn more about our efforts, you can sign up for our newsletter at globalreturnsproject.earth. Thank you.